couldn't do it. When I saw the puddle out front of the house, I'm like, I got in the car.
I kept checking my email every 5 minutes. And always
Mr.
like,
Chair, I have 7:30 and we are live. The meeting floor is yours.
Perfect. So I'll take this opportunity to call the August 3rd, 2022 meeting of the City of Huntington Woods Historic District Commission to order. And as Hank mentioned, the time is 7:30 according to my phone. The first order of business, we're just going to take a look at the approval of the meeting minutes from the July 6th meeting, and just wondering if anybody has any comments and they'd like to, there is a little strange verbiage in there, I did notice, so I'm not sure everybody who's will notice that, but does anybody have any comments? Anyone?
Chris, why don't you give me your corrections or questions on
Yeah, there was one sentence that was really,
what page?
I'm just looking for it, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't say it, so I was thinking that the person who said it might have more to say than I, but, hang on, I just gotta find it here. Where did where was it? I'm sorry. Turn the corner on the page. Now I can't find it here. I'll get back. If I find anything, I'll let you know, but right now I'm just gonna have to pass then on it.
Okay.
I saw one sentence that I thought was odd, but now I can't seem to find it.
Okay.
So I guess I'd just entertain a motion if someone would like to make a motion.
So moved.
Second. All in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
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 I would abstain.
Okay, thank you very much.
That gives you a vote of 4, I believe.
It does. Thank you very much. So it looks like our applicants are here, so we're just gonna roll right into our agenda today. So, excuse me, I'm just gonna flip to the right page. So we're just, like to call up the, please help me with the name.
Sure, my name is Brett Mahaffey.
Okay. And this is for the application for 26888 York.
Correct. It's 2680 for Jim and Alana Schmier.
Welcome, welcome. So there is just a little bit of, if anybody has one of these, just the way this works, we just try to follow a little bit of order here. I know we're somewhat casual, but you've got the opportunity to certainly present right now. We ask that anybody who would like to speak on their behalf, please do so. And then after a while, that does come to our discussion here, and we just don't like to get into a point-by-point discussion. So the floor is yours, so please feel free. And as you speak, just please state your name. So if you can, speak into the microphone and go ahead and present your proposal.
Before we start, I'd just like to introduce myself.
That'd be great.
My name is Jim Schmier. This is my wife, Ilana.
Hi.
We actually moved into.
Can you try to speak into the microphone a little bit?
Yeah, it'll help
It
us
will
out.
not pick up.
Sorry. We moved into Huntington Woods, 1976, actually, at Berkeley and Lincoln. We subsequently bought a house on Hendry, better known as the Sussman House or the Mickey Unger House or whatever. My parents were friends. In fact, Mr. Jenks, I think I've seen you for God knows how many years here.
I've been around for a few months.
Yes. We moved to Birmingham for 15 years, and now we are
Everybody
back.
makes a mistake.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's why we came home. In fact, we bought our house from Bobby and Judy Rubin, if you know them, and they too have moved back. They moved away. They too have moved back in the past few months. So we're all coming home. Plus, my daughter and her husband live here. They moved back from Boston. They live on Sherwood now. And I just want to say, we love our house. We have a very historical, if you look on my porch, I've said this, it's an educational architecture. There are houses from the 20s, 30s, 40s. There's even an escapee from West Bloomfield that suddenly showed up there. It looks like escaped in the 70s, I don't know. But we don't want to make changes, and we have a very special house. But we need to do something with our windows, as I think you can see by our pictures. And I will let you take over now.
So they are looking to replace 19 wood windows with renewal by Anderson windows. It's a wood composite material. We have been approved in the past here. I think the last one was in 2019. We are replacing with the existing double hung, matching those. The color will actually be a dark bronze with either a did you pick a color yet?
Yes, it was a sandstone.
Sandstone, okay. so like a light brown, coil, or finish, I'm sorry. It's similar to the neighbor's house also. These windows have all been coiled over, white coil, if you can see, you guys all have the packets of, okay. So you see at the end, I have some of the damage, you can pull, we pulled away one of the coil, and it was all rotted inside there. So they probably have covered it at some point. I didn't pull all of them back, obviously, because some of them are still intact, but the one that was, we pulled it back and it was all rotted, the frame was, so. That's the gist of it, and also the front entry door, also replacing that as well with a Provia, Signet. It's the top of the line Provia entry door system. It's pretty close, minus the, you can tell from the pattern of the new door compared to the old, but they match as close as possible, still with the mail slot, still with the brass knocker on it as well. He is wanting to restore the side wood door though, correct? They are not replacing that. They want to restore that.
I mean, somebody put siding all over the house at one point. We'd like to get rid of that siding and put the wood back to some of the shape around the doors and places like that. We also anticipate, the garage had copper gutters, which are sort of unique. They didn't move them to the front. I think they did that when they put the siding on, whenever. And what we'd like to do is move that gutter system back forward because it's sort of unique and really pretty, and it's copper. So, I think that's a few years down the road.
And then also the front living room windows on the lower level, they are stained glass. We are not touching those at all. I know that's not allowed, and he doesn't want to replace those as well, so those will be staying. And matching grill patterns as well, in there.
Thank you. Do you have any more comments before we shift over to our folks? Anything else to talk about?
I think it's pretty cut and dry, so I don't really have too much to,
Okay. Thank
if you have
you.
any questions, I can answer them.
Perfect.
Try to.
Hank?
Okay, basically this is one of our, it is definitely a contributing resource. It's one of the finest example of arts and crafts that we have in the city. The bracketing is well evident. The windows, he has shown a lot of damage to the windows in different spots. He has documented the windows to the extent that he can. As to the condition of specific windows, they would have to be able to answer that, they could answer it better than I could. But I did want to point out that the standards, which I'd like to go through, which is a property shall be used for its historic purpose or replaced in a new use that requires minimal change to the defining characteristics of the building and its site and environment. The use is still the same, it's still single-family residential, so there is no use change on that. The historic character of the property shall be retained and preserved. The removal of historic materials or alterations of features and spaces that characterize the property shall be avoided. The windows will definitely be visible from three sides on this home, so you have to take that into consideration. Whether or not they match the profile in that, they've included the spec sheets so that you can take a look at that, but they will be seen, all of this. So whether or not the characteristics should be avoided or whether or not the windows are deteriorated enough to the point where they have to be replaced and can't be repaired, those are discussions that you might want to entertain with the applicant this evening. 3, each property shall be recognized as a physical record of its time, place, and use. Changes that create a false sense of historical development, such as adding conjectural features or architectural elements from other buildings, shall not be undertaken. Again, this particular standard, windows can be debated with it. I would encourage you to have the discussion about it. And again, with the gentleman here from Renewal, you can get as thorough a discussion as possible. 4, most properties change over time. Those changes have acquired a historic significance in their own right and shall be retained and preserved. The significance of the property is as it exists now. Eventually, most components wear out. Your determination will be whether or not this has reached that point, if this is a reasonable request considering the condition. Also, whether or not everything matches to the point where there won't be any diminished sight lines, whether there won't be any additional blockage, the glazing should be the same, and those kind of considerations. 5, distinctive features, finishes, and construction techniques or examples of craftsmanship that characterize the property shall be preserved. To the extent possible is the consideration here. This is definitely removal. They're not asking to repair anything. And 6, deteriorated historic features shall be repaired rather than be replaced. Where the severity of the deterioration requires replacement of the distinctive feature, the new feature shall match the old in design, color, texture, and other visual qualities, and where possible, materials. Replacement of the missing features shall be substantiated by documentary, physical, and/or pictorial evidence. Again, that goes to the extent possible being the consideration here, and whether the mutton bars are the same size, whether the rails and stiles and components of the windows are the same size, would be a consideration. Number 7 really won't apply because it's chemical or physical treatment such as sandblasting. They're not doing any of that. 8, architectural resources, that won't apply in this particular situation because all they're doing is windows and the front door here. And 9, new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction shall not destroy historic materials that characterize the property. The new work shall be differentiated from the old and shall be compatible with the massing, size, scale, and architectural features to protect the historic integrity of the property and its environment. And again, one could argue that any work destroys some historic material. The discussion about repair versus replace needs to take place. 10, new additions and adjacent or related new construction shall be undertaken in a manner that if removed in the future, the essential form and integrity of the historic property and its environment would be unimpaired. The problem with windows is that once they're gone, they're gone. There's no replacing, you can't go back and put old windows back in there. So again, the need is going to be the key question with that. So having said that, I do want to point out that these windows are Fibrex. They're not wood. They're approximately 40% wood, and they're about 60% polymer or related plastic type material, so it's a composite, these windows. I will say that the windows, and correct me if I'm wrong, but your windows, rails, and stiles and components, mutton bars, would be the same size as what's on the existing?
Yeah, it's gonna be a little larger. Like, you can't match these old school windows anymore.
Okay, but how much larger is the detail?
At the very bottom page, it's probably page 30 in here. Yeah, it's page 30. It's about the rail is about a 1/2 inch wider, and then the bottom and top rail are about a 1/2 inch at the top. The bottom one is the biggest. It's about an inch taller at the bottom.
So there is a loss of glazing on this, which
Correct.
is one of the things that I wanted to point out. The other things that you want to consider with this is that with Fibrex, it is it's a composition material, so it's not going to be the same. And I assume that you're looking at simulated divided lights.
Yes.
So they're not true divided lights. So any of the windows that would be there now wouldn't be kind of the same thing. Now, the question also becomes whether or not you can tell that from the street. That's going to be up to you to discuss. But you should have the conversation. And that's all I have for this.
Thank you, Hank. Jeff, why don't you start today?
The most important part of this would be the street-facing facade and the parts that people can see. I would hope that there's a mud bar simulation. Ideally, it would be wood for wood. I'm not sure how other people feel about that. But other than that, the way the windows open is not considered an issue as to what they were before and what they were now. I like the idea that you're at least being able to improve the windows, which might mean that heat stays in and cold stays out, or heat stays out and cold stays in. And it's reasonable. The only thing I'm hoping is that where those windows can be seen, that simulation goes in there.
Definitely, yeah. We measure, like, all of our windows are custom made to the opening, so we've already measured the full opening. We'll match it. Like, any replacement product is going to be bigger than what you used back in the day.
No, I'm not worried about sight.
yeah,
I'm
but
worried
yes.
about the design of it.
Yep, so it's going to be the same grill pattern and all that. It's, like he said, it's a simulated divided light. I don't think anybody makes a true divided light anymore. But yeah, there'll be a bar between the glass and on the outside and so forth. And it isn't just like a flat bar. It does have detail in it, too.
And that's what
And the only thing from the front of the house, because we're not doing the lower windows, would be the entry door, and also the two upper windows. But even if you look at the front of the house, the picture, the peak kind of covers those two front windows. So you would see the simulate, or you would see the grills on the top.
Now, will the upper windows, the second floor will be with design?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Correct.
other than that, you know, then my only question would be wood versus composite, but I think you meet the standards.
And like, I don't have the address with me, but we have been approved. We don't do very many homes in our historic district, but we were approved last time with our product.
Okay.
And remember,
It was
from
like
the
2019.
front of the house, what you're going to see is the one.
They won't be able to hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, you can say it.
Go ahead.
To move. The one thing you will see from the front of the house is that big stained glass window or cut glass window.
And those are not being,
And that's not being touched.
I understand.
Okay.
And the door, I think, is a close enough match.
That's honestly the closest door I've ever seen. We just had one with Ypsilanti where it was not even, it was hard to get it close, but luckily this one was a solid door with no glass, so it was pretty easy.
Mr. Chair, just for clarification for the record, the letter that came with it, they were asking for window replacement. I don't know that it matters that they're including a door, but I do want to point out that the door is fiberglass and is not wood.
Thank you.
Next.
You're up.
Okay.
So we'll go in order. I won't surprise everybody.
If you went in alphabetical order, I'd be first.
Line up the lights.
And you'd be last,
I'd be
actually.
last, I know, which I normally am, so.
Okay, so just to be clear, when it comes to the grills, that you have that simulated divider between the two, the outside and inside. Okay, so this is the full divided light grills is what you, in terms of your specs, okay. Yeah, let me go back to the beginning. So you don't know the extent of the damage. You found one window, or have all the windows been checked?
Well, on the interior, a lot of the windows, you could see when you picked up the windows in between the storms, some of them had storms, you can see a lot of the wood rotting on the side.
Okay,
I just went to the one that was easiest to access and pulled the flashing back, and it was completely rotted in there.
okay. Did you investigate actually having the windows restored?
I have spoken, there are not many qualified people that can actually do it, to be quite honest with you. It's incredibly labor intensive.
Right.
It's somebody, in fact, somebody from Detroit Renaissance Company, I believe it's called, they would assign somebody and he would come live for 4 or 5 months doing windows.
There's a rental opportunity here for you.
I have a trailer.
I'm joking.
So, and it's prohibitive, it's even more expensive, and what we end up, and what I would really like to get rid of are those aluminum storms
Right.
that are inefficient, they're hard to use, and the windows upstairs, we're holding them open with books. With my precocious 5-year-old grandson, is dangerous to, you know, we haven't had him over yet, but that's scary just the thought of it.
Yeah.
That's how those windows.
That does remind me of my college days, however, I have to say.
And I don't feel like college.
So, so you're surmising that all of the windows have similar kinds of damage at this point. Now, if I remember correctly, and I can't find now in my notes, you're not replacing, aside from the window that faces the street, you're not replacing all of the windows in the house. Is that correct? There are a couple of original windows.
There's one above.
Is it the,
There's one on the side that's a glass block, and I believe just 2 windows, one on each side of the fireplace, correct? Or the other? Are there only 2?
okay.
And,
Oh, those are casement windows?
Fireplace is on,
The fireplace is on the east side.
Right.
There are 2 windows that are actually unique, we can't find replacements for anywhere. But they both open in.
They're casement windows, in other words, yeah.
They're not traditional case, they're, again, it's just one big window that opens up, but they have mullions in them, but they're sort of, again, they're unique. You can't find them anymore, and again, talking to Anderson, they can't come up, nobody can come up with the replacement.
Okay.
And I'm prepared to actually rebuild those if we have to.
And, okay.
But they're not real, I mean, they're basically, they're 2 by 2
Right, right,
Real expensive.
right. The, the other windows in the house, I mean, I live across the street, I should have this all committed to memory, but I do not. So all of the other windows have that kind of aluminum storm panel over them, correct? With the coil around it. Is that correct? Is that the way the others are treated right now?
I think they're all, it's been like a month since I've been there, so I'm trying to take a look at the picture.
I mean, to give you an example, the other day, my wife, Alana, was upstairs, there was a bird in our house. I assume it got in when we were moving in. We couldn't get it out, we couldn't open the storms to get them out. We actually had to pull the rubber off the storm to remove the glass, so we could open, I mean, that's.
Or take the screen out.
And take the screen out.
Right.
To get that, and the bird was able to fly.
Okay,
But we've essentially ruined that particular storm doing it, but it was the only way to get the bird out.
okay,
It does look like every single window is like that, with coil around the storm.
okay. Now, how did you arrive at the dark bronze color for the exterior?
That would be you, sorry.
If you look behind the garage, the original windows, I think, are still there. And I've sort of gone with that color scheme that was there. As I say, you can't see it anymore. But it's, as I say, you've seen that garage in the back. They've never done anything back there. As I say, it was a sandstone at one point that you can see that we're trying to match with the framing, and then the bronze we thought would complement the inside.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because I've looked high and low for examples of Craftsman bungalow houses and haven't been able to find one that has a dark window treatment. They were all white. I'm just going to ask my fellow panelists to correct me if I'm wrong.
White or black?
White or black, yeah.
The house next door to them does have two-tone.
No, but we're talking about this, we're talking about this specific house, yeah, yeah. So that was the question that I had, yeah.
And this is as dark as we could get. We couldn't, if I'm not mistaken, black was not available.
Yeah, I think it's now right now.
The bronze was the darkest we could get.
It looks black.
And from a distance, it's,
Would you then repaint the frame around the cut glass window that faces York with that same color?
You don't have to change.
what I was planning on doing is removing that siding. If you look at there, it's all been aluminum sided and there's a storm there. Probably next spring, I was planning on taking off those storms and restoring the wood and making, again, that sandstone color, it's on the garage as well if you look at it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the funny thing about old houses is that, the paint colors change over the years. I mean, if you really wanted to know what the original color is, you'd have to just find someplace with the woodwork on the side of the house and just sort of scrape at it until you got down to the wood.
And that's what I tried to do behind the garage, because I figured that would have been left alone to some extent.
But you saw it around the frame of the front door when you took the aluminum of the front door. You saw that same, beigey color.
Yeah, that was there as well. It was, again, when I took the aluminum off, again, I don't know if you saw me working, but I did take the aluminum off. I thought of actually restoring that rather than replacing it, but there was too much rot going on in the door. But again, that was beige under the aluminum siding at one point, so again, I don't know.
Okay. And then the other question I had, and this is to come back to something that you mentioned before. This is our renewal by Anderson, gentlemen. Run through again the differences in dimensions between the framing on the windows that exist in the house now and what the new windows will be.
Sure, on page 30 of the sheet you should have, it's towards the very end, it's like 3 or 4 pages from the back. You can see the check rail, ours is 2 and 1/32, so roughly 2 inches, and they currently exist are about 1.5 inches.
Hang on, let me just interrupt you 1 second. I'm not sure that we have that sheet.
Yeah,
Do you?
hang on, it's right.
Oh, is it out of order?
It's in here, it's just, there's not a page number.
big
I was looking
Yeah,
at it.
that one, yep.
Yeah, so whereas, that's before these enlarged pictures, it's right,
This page
there
right
you
here.
go. So
Yep.
that's the existing window
Okay.
dimensions, and then this is the
Okay.
the dimensions of the new. There we go, yeah.
Okay. All right, that answers my questions for now.
Rob, are
Thank you. So by way of introduction, I'm a historic preservationist,
Okay.
and I have been for 40-some years. Lots of windows have come past me, and I want to talk about your windows. There's a lot of meat on this bone to talk about. And I'm not even quite sure where to begin. So I'm going to be bouncing all over a little bit, but I'm sure you can follow me. Have you, aside from this cursory investigation of restoring your windows, seriously considered restoring your windows?
That was our first plan.
It was. And you spoke to this company in Detroit that told you it was a 4 or 5 month move-in process and it was going to be prohibitively expensive, more than new windows?
Yeah, actually, more than the windows, but more than that, the existing wood around the windows is so completely rotten. I mean, you have holes inside the.
I'm sorry, but they're not gonna be able to
Yeah,
hear.
you gotta pull it up to
You have
the mic, sorry. Thank you.
I apologize.
No, it's okay.
I said, but more than that, the frame on the inside of the windows is pretty, I mean, you can see holes through to the outside. So even on the frames, the wood is so rotten all the way through, it seemed like they would have to rebuild the windows in their entirety. So it's not restoring, it's replacing windows with wood.
So whatever you do, that wood is going to be replaced.
Yeah,
Okay. So in my experience, which is probably far larger than yours, I've never seen a window that couldn't be restored. And window restoration in Detroit is readily available by a number of companies. And window restoration is so big because the cost to comparing two new windows is a fraction of the cost of restoration. You save a tremendous amount of money by restoring windows. And the R value of a properly restored window can be as high as a brand new window. The R value is what you're measuring, your heat transfer. And in a properly restored window, the R value can be brought up to brand new windows. Wood is still the gold standard of all windows. You don't get a better window than a wooden window, and you have those now. I've looked at your house in person. I have looked at all the photographs that you submitted, and what you have are windows that are almost 100 years old that haven't been cared for. You have broken glazing, which is easily repaired. You have broken cords, which is easily repaired. These are jobs that many homeowners do themselves. When you have rotting wood frames, you want to call an expert to do that. So I totally understand that this is a process that may be beyond your scope because you've never done it before. But when you involve people who have done it before, it's a lick and a schmear operation. It's an easy operation. I'm sorry, I wasn't making fun of your name.
No, I just.
It's something that is very, very commonly done. And to your point about true divided lights not being available, true divided lights are available by numerous companies. Numerous companies. You run up with a phone book and buy true divided light windows. So that is, the information you're presenting is not accurate. The pattern of the windows may be the same, but the scale and the size are off, and that's a dramatic difference. You're reducing the glazed area by a lot of inches, and that is not going to read as an old window, as an original window. It's going to read as a brand new window. What's going to look original are the two original windows in front, which you're maintaining. I also read that your locks are broken. Locks are not reasons to replace windows. These are very, very repairable things. The rotting wood can be excised, which it will be in any case, and replaced, which is even more of a reason to stick with what you have. Windows that have lasted 100 years, and with proper care, will last another 100 years. I assure you, new windows are not going to last 100 years. That's why they're called replacement windows. At some point, they're going to be replaced again. I really don't like the size differences at all. And Mr. Schmier, you said something about original windows in the garage?
I believe in the back of the garage, some of the, again, my thought was people don't, when I lived on Hendry and Berkeley, we didn't usually go to the back. There were windows in the back of the garage we sort of ignored. And I assume that these were ignored as well.
Are you talking about windows that are actually in place in a wall?
These were double hung windows in the garage.
Are they the same as in the house?
I don't believe they're as good because they don't have, and again, I didn't really inspect the mechanisms. I didn't see that they had sash and that sort of, the sash cords and all that business.
Okay. So just last week, I was talking to a company working in Huntington Woods. They're called Artisan Restoration. And they restore windows. That's all they do. They're a window restoration company. And they told me they have worked on windows as old as 1818 that were fully restored. But typically they work on 1920s, 30s, and 40s wood windows that you find in these first-ring suburbs and in Detroit. So you can tell where I'm going with this. I'm not supporting your project. And I would suggest that you investigate.
But wouldn't that mean putting back the aluminum store?
No, the aluminum stores were add-ons. Those were never original. Originally, you had wooden storms.
We don't have wooden stores, though.
But originally, that's what you had. So if you wanted storms, which had a superior layer of protection, you would have to have wooden storms fabricated.
Right, so we'd have to build up with the single, and you talked about the R value with the single frame. Again, these are, admittedly, the glass that is leaded is not repeatable anymore. They don't do it anymore,
Right.
unfortunately. I have a feeling they decided it was imperfect rather than, obviously, but would a single glazed leaded window present the same R value that a double glazed, more modern window? You said.
No, of course not. No,
I thought.
no. But if I don't look at
Would it
the.
restore, would this window restored have the same R value as a double, Anderson window?
I don't know how those leaded glass are.
Not the leaded, I'm talking about the
Just a
regular,
typical
these
Yes.
paneled windows are.
Yes,
The
when-
panel, they're glass and you can see the lead of sorts because they're imperfect.
When you restore the window, and you restore the glazing, and you restore the weather stripping, and you restore the frames, you wind up with a window with the same R value as a brand new window. There's a tremendous amount of information about this online.
Because again, I don't know, but I guess a double hung window with single panes, is that gonna be as energy efficient as a two-pane window from, let's say, Anderson?
With a storm window, yes. And if you go to, it's called SHPO, State Historic Preservation Office, they have numerous videos on companies and individuals who have restored their windows to the same value. And they give you demonstrations using thermal guns, showing you where the heat loss is and where the heat loss isn't. So typically, if you aim a thermal gun at the center of a window, you get the highest R value rating. As you spread out, that R value diminishes. And in new windows and restore windows, the diminishment factor is just about equal. But the total R value factor also remains the same. You're just, by restoring windows, you get to keep what's original to the house, which is an enhancement to the house and an enhancement to the district and an enhancement to the city, because you're keeping everything authentic. Only you're spending a whole hell of a lot less money.
I can't imagine that would be the
storms, that we'd have to get storms made.
That's pretty much how it works.
You said
I
storms
just-
are not original to the house, correct?
No, no, I didn't say that. I
He
said the aluminum storms
Okay.
in place are not original to the house. I just did a restoration in Palmer Woods in Detroit, 42 windows. These people had the absolute option of going out and buying brand-new windows for the house. They didn't. They restored every single window, and it was a lengthy process. Well, what they have now is a fabulously restored English Tudor house with the original windows. Their air conditioning runs better than ever. They have less heat transfer. They haven't had a winter yet in the house, but that's coming up soon. It's the way, it's the right way to do it. I know it's a lot to consider. I would seriously consider it and talk to some good restoration people.
Any other questions, Robert?
No, that's about it for now.
Thanks. Steve?
Chris, thank you. Are these windows aluminum clad?
No, it's vinyl cladded. It's built into the process when the windows are extruded at the factory. The
So-
color is put in at that time.
Okay, so the exterior part of it is this composite material, correct?
Correct, yeah.
And you addressed a color called sandstone.
Mhm.
I would assume that's lighter than dark bronze.
Correct, yes.
And what do you do with the rest of the windows that aren't being replaced? Like, I was just curious why they're not being also proposed to replace the windows on the sides of the fireplace. Why would those be kept?
Because of the way they open. I
Because they
mean,
open.
they
They're
work in
ambiguous.
a very unique way. They're a small window, and they are not in such a state of disrepair, probably because they've never opened and closed as often. So, but they will all have the same color ultimately.
So, what would you be doing to those? Do you need to remove aluminum siding from those too also and
No,
repaint them?
They don't have storms on them, do they?
They do,
They do have storms.
yes, we would actually, on those two windows, I was gonna do it myself, I was gonna take them down and strip them. I assume there's lead in them, so I had to be careful with that, I don't know. But that was my plan.
So,
And I've been watching a bunch of Brent Hull videos, I don't know if you've watched, he's actually out of Oregon, I believe, is an historic. So I have been trying to educate myself on these windows and the ability to restore them or not restore them as much as I could.
so is the eventual intent to make all the exterior portions of the windows this sandstone color, including the three in the front?
Yes, I would like to, I anticipated again, when I pulled away some of the siding there was a cream color, sort of a sandstone cream color that is under that siding that was there at one point that I would want to restore, which is basically the same color as we're talking that the garages and the rest of the house.
Right.
is.
So eventually, your thoughts are that the three cut glass windows in the front are of high enough integrity that they are still good, or do they need to be restored? I'm a little confused.
They're lead and metal.
Oh, not the glass itself, but the frames.
They
and
don't
the,
open or close.
They don't open or
And they're under
close.
the porch too, so they've never seen the hallways like the other windows have on the front.
But they do have an aluminum storm over them, which we're going to remove.
Is there any other intent to, like right now, as I look at the house, all the exterior trim, and the eaves, and the peak in the front of the house, everything is white, including the window frames. Is the intention to keep that white and have the frames the sandstone, or is this kind of like a overall project with?
Again, under that, I've not looked under that aluminum suspect, again, it's that same sandstone cream color that was on the house back whenever, I suspect in the 70s.
We are going to replace it if that was your question.
Right now, the aluminum, there's some gashes in it. Somebody hung Christmas lights, so there's bunches of holes in it across the front. And there's, as I say, several dents on the fascia.
Is there any, where would the screens be on these windows that, the new windows that are being proposed?
Double hung, it's on the outside.
It's on the outside of the window, okay. And I have a couple other questions. And you didn't bring a sample for us to look at of this,
Green?
of the no,
Oh, sorry.
of the one, I'm curious about this Fibrex and what it
Oh.
looks like, what it feels like. I've never seen it, and I just, do you not have sample
I
windows?
did not bring one with me today, no.
But do you have sample
Yeah,
windows?
I have them at the office.
It seems like something that you would have wanted to bring in. Regarding the front door, is the front door restorable, or is that warped terribly, or is it not usable for some reason in its current?
If you look at the inside panels, they're all cracked. Many of them are loose. There's some crack, as I say, on the inside of it. The entire door would need stripping, and there's some, I don't know how weather tight it is, because we really haven't been there this winter. I know the side door, as I left, there was a puddle of water that had intruded on the house, so again, I'm not certain. But then there was a pretty horrific rain coming down.
Right,
And on that front door too, I don't know if you're looking at the page, at the bottom, the sill or whatever, it's cracked and it's settled awkwardly, so that all needs to come out. He has a mason that's willing to do all that.
The door, does it open and close? Like, you know, you gotta lean against it or shove it to get the door locked when you're inside or anything?
You
I
can't.
didn't know how,
The latch, the normal latch doesn't work on that door. The deadbolt works, the other lock does not work. It doesn't line up anymore. And most of the wood on the inside of the door trim is deteriorated, and at one point they had a mortise lock system that they replaced with something else, but really didn't fill in the holes particularly well from the old mortise.
and then are there samples available of the door? Now, that's a composite of fiberglass material too?
I don't know about the doors, I can look into that.
I mean, there's cross sections or chunks of it. I mean, you have to
Right.
bring something to the homeowners to show them what they're getting, I assume. I don't know if, because I'm just not familiar with particular products, and,
Profi is made by, it's an Amish company in Ohio, a Sugar Creek, I believe it is, so, they've done all of our doors for us for the past, I think, 10 years or something.
I have a wood door on my house, and I just refinished it for the first time in 20-some years, last year. And I'll tell you, it looks like it might, better than my dining room table. Okay, well, I do have to tell you that I am kind of a little bit on the fence about this, but I'm finding that I don't really have enough information to be able to really have a good concept of exactly what the products are. And it seems like that they're relatively easily accessible. And I would have liked to have seen an example window showing the sizes, dimensions, thickness of the frames.
All
With
those
the
are
lights,
included on that one sheet that you saw on the.
Right, well, it's really hard
dimensions,
to
but
get a good,
I didn't bring a sample, I mean, like I said, we've been approved for a historic before using that same Fibrex composite material, so that's why I didn't really bring one with me.
Do you have any pictures of houses
I
with
would
those windows
just,
in them?
Mr. Chair, just for the point, because it keeps coming up, any past approvals or whatever they were for are kept on an individual basis. There is no precedent for an approval. It's relative to the project at hand, and it's not a comparative situation.
Thank you, Hank.
okay, well, thank you very much. I'm done, Chris.
Okay, thanks, Hank. I just have a couple questions. One of the ones is just, I know colors come up in the past, and from what I remember, and granted, I don't have all my stuff in front of me, but we normally don't necessarily comment on color. Is that true or false?
It's true. One of the reasons that I would surmise that Robert brings it up is
How do you
because,
bring it up?
okay,
Whoever brought it.
commented
Well,
on it.
it's been discussed. I just
And
wanted to ask about
I
it.
did bring it up, but I was more curious if there was gonna be a
Okay,
patchwork of colors.
however,
It's gonna be,
the comment about black or white would be the predominant colors on that. That is correct. Those are what you will see with most arts and crafts houses. Whether or not we regulate it, we do not.
I just wanted
But
to.
it goes to authenticity.
I just wanted to
Why
throw
I'm
that out
sure
there,
it was
so
brought
just
up.
because I know that sometimes that, I just want to make sure that we aren't confusing ourselves and trying to focus on the things that we should be. I think the biggest struggle that I have is knowing that, on historic windows, sightlines really becomes the big issue. And looking at the details, I guess the thing that's confusing me is when I look, like, for example, I'm looking at the plan detail, and you've got a 3-inch dimension there, but 1 inch and 5/32 of that is the side rails. So I don't know if is that visible when you install it?
So you're gonna, because it is covered with aluminum on the outside, I didn't measure the outside, I was measuring from the inside and trying to get behind the stop as well, so it could be off by maybe a 1/4 inch or so.
No, I'm actually, like, your new window detail. So, because typically we've got brick openings. So typically you have a brick mold that has the dimension, and then you hit the sash dimension. So does a brick mold get installed in front of that 1 and 5/32 inch?
So we were matching the existing, I believe, with insert windows, so there would be no brick mold on it, it would just go all the way into the pocket, and we would do the aluminum trim just like existing.
So, because my point is, if I had a detail that showed it, sometimes you've got the masonry
Yeah, if you were
opening,
gonna have brick mold.
and then
for
you
this, it would
typically
be
have a
wide.
surround, and then you sash. So you might have the same amount of glass, because if you look, I'm doing my math, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that means that side rail, jamb rail is only 1 and 5/8 inch wide, which the existing is 2 inches. Because if I subtract 3 inches, 1 and 5/32 from 3 inches, did I do my math right? No, I did not. So 2 and 5/8, right? So, I'm just trying to look at apples to apples. It's tough to determine from what you're showing me, because I don't quite understand how that gets installed in the openings. So a traditional wood window may have a brick mold, and then you see that sash profile. It may almost be the exact same amount of profile. You're showing 3 inches total. I'm getting into the weeds because, again, we're looking at the profiles. To some degree, I agree with you that most times it's difficult to match the profiles. We can get pretty darn close. There are other windows that do so. The other thing we're concerned about is the distance from glass to faces and things, which is tough to ascertain when we just have we don't have enough detail on the existing. The mutton bars, I'm very comfortable when you put the shadow bar and the mutton bar on either side. I think that is a very smart way to do a replication, so I'm comfortable with that. The other thing that gets, I think the biggest, so the head and the sill detail, again, the sill detail, that rail down there at 3 and 29/32 is the only one that screams to me that it's really off, because it's much larger than what's there. The upper, again, rail, we've got a 3 and 16 inch dimension, but you've got this whole plate system that I don't know how that integrates into the actual opening to know if it actually does change the profile. So I'm struggling a bit, because I understand that we're gonna have a little dimensional difference, but the more you try to replicate it, the better it is, the more acceptable, I guess, it is for me personally. Others may not feel the same way. I do believe that when you add the aluminum sashes, it really does change the sight lines of the windows, which is too bad, or the storms, excuse me. So, stripping those off actually gives me a little bit more of the actual image of what the building wanted to be. So I appreciate the desire to get rid of those, and I do agree that they're not very functional. I will concur with Robert that when a storm plus a single pane window, yes, you will get some very close R values and the air infiltration goes down. Not true if you remove the storm. So I just wanted to clarify that, because a single pane will not have the same UR value as, so it is in combination, and there is data to support that. But I'm a little concerned about the actual profiles, some of those dimensional things, and maybe if there had been some installation details, understanding how the existing was installed, it may actually make me very comfortable with this. So that's the tough thing for me, because that is the biggest thing with windows, is that sightline. So the installation details would help us better understand what's happening. I think I've talked.
What do you mean by installation details?
So when you look at, when you go, so what we're concerned about is how thin those members are, the amount of glass, and then the setbacks in that. So I think with this type of window, you've got that, I call it the rough opening, and they're coming in, putting in a frame all the way around that, and then setting the sash in. It's tough to tell on your details here, right?
We're going
Which-
to the rough opening, and then,
So that
these
one in-
dimensions don't have the brick mold because, we have aluminum already over the window, so we're matching the existing look with the aluminum over.
And so, you know,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so I'm just trying to get, like, how much smaller does the glass get? Because if you're stripping out, sometimes there's some, with those pulley sockets and things, you can strip some things off all the way back to rough openings. Then that inch and 5/30 seconds gets set on that, and then your sight line is actually the same, right? Because that window sash is really 2 5/8 or whatever, if I do my math right this time. So those are the kinds of things that make me feel better about that, because of the way the stacked trim is on that window, you're actually replicating that pretty close. If you're taking that as the stopping point and then adding and shrinking it by an additional 1 5/30 seconds on each side, then shrinking it again, that looks very untrue to the original.
Trying to show you a zoom on my thing.
Part of the problem with that is that it can't get into the record.
Right.
It's
So,
the same, it's the picture you have here, just blown up.
yeah, I can see, but if, I mean.
So you can see like this half inch right here, that's where our aluminum trim goes into. I don't know
So
what
if you
you're
just
talking about.
come here real quick.
Hold on, I won't have a
You
microphone.
can't, right. Okay. I don't know how to do it without the details. I apologize, but I'm just kind of making my point that you may be closer than I think, you may be further off than I think, and it's difficult for me to tell. I do know, and this isn't, I know windows are very expensive. I have old windows. I've looked at replacing. My windows were a lot more than yours, because I was trying to replicate something, a steel sash window, but there are some different products that are traditionally more wood-based that can get closer to the sight lines, and that's all I'm gonna say, so.
We've looked into those companies. Have you,
Pella makes them, I know Anderson makes them, but it's a different series of windows, and that traditionally have pretty darn close sight lines, and then it goes back to the installation. So, I mean, speaking just from some experiences I've had, I'm just gonna say that.
yeah,
And-
we did
and-
have Pella come out though.
And and I don't remember all my series, they change, but it's the architectural series, there's the Pro Line, there's so many different series now, but there are window companies that can get closer. And
Marvin does a good
and
job.
Marvin does a very good job, Graham does a very good job, but I'm just saying that there are things that are even closer at our disposal. I'm not gonna comment on the cost or anything, I'm trying not to, I understand that there's, cost is certainly an issue for you, but we're trying to make sure that we just at least get to a solution that we feel satisfies the intent of the Department of Interior Standards. I don't have anything else to say. I see somebody from the public at this point in time, and I know that we have an opportunity for, if there's any public input, please feel free, if you would like to say something, could you please use the microphone and state your address and name and speak into the microphone if you'd like to comment.
Okay, I will justify my presence here. My name is Mary Paquette Apt. I live at 26881 York, directly across the street. Have that beautiful front vision of the house. And I was just curious how they would look. You know, I've gotten some of my questions answered. Oh, and full disclosure, I am related to somebody on your board, but I'm the public. He will vouch for this, that I'm here.
Mostly by marriage.
I'm here totally on my own recognizance, and because I was curious about how a bronze window, which I guess is the narrower part, and then there's a larger surround that would be that sand color.
No,
I don't understand how they were going to look, and I was curious about that.
it's unfortunate we don't have a sample, but
My daughter had, she lives in Pleasant Ridge, she had her windows done actually by the same company. And again, she picked the window frame itself was dark bronze, and then it was complemented, the frame itself was a lighter sandstone color that sort of complemented the frame of the window itself.
Frame of the window, and that's the thing that kind of looks like what you found in the back of the garage, which I can totally relate to. We had a garage window that provided the colors when we had to redo
And
it.
that's sort of the color, yes, that's basically, and you see it on the front of the garage there, that same color.
Then there'll still be, what's white there that's around the windows right now is
They didn't
aluminum.
They didn't do that on the garage.
Yeah, you're right.
They left the garage alone, they, somehow or other, they went, I assume they didn't want to paint at one point, and somebody sold them white aluminum siding.
So, but that's going to go back on there, that aluminum surround.
I would like it not to go back.
Okay, because that's what I thought I heard the gentleman from say.
No, on the windows, there is a product that goes around the windows, on the leaded windows up front, where they just put that white aluminum siding. I would like to go back to the original, the wood was there at one point.
Yeah,
And I
well,
just-
So you're asking if the white frame around the windows is going to, all right, it's going to be replaced with that same color.
It's kind of gonna be like the neighbor next door. It's the only picture I have.
although they
It's a
just,
dark
that
window
was
with-
totally
Can-
redone, that's just like a new house.
Yes.
So
Could
that
we
was-
ask that you speak into the microphone?
Yeah, microphone,
Just put
sorry.
your face
I'm
in.
not
Yeah.
paying attention, I'm doodling here.
that was,
Yeah,
looks totally different from how it
it was,
used to look.
right.
Okay, but also what I understand from what the board was saying, that there is some, and from what you said too, that it's actually, in some respects, capturing a more historical coloration and.
What's the
look.
original color that we see underneath the existing aluminum is
Yeah.
that beige color.
Yeah, and so it would just be, it'd be an interesting change. It'll be an interesting change.
Yeah,
in
and
the
that
neighborhood.
peak would be that same, probably that same beige. Yeah, that white aluminum peak that exists now. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was interested in. All the other questions that you raise about restoration, all that, I guess are well taken, but just how the end result would look is what, and your historic sensibility, it shows. So, I mean, at least, you think along those lines that everybody seems to be thinking of. So thank you.
Thank you.
We don't want to change this house, we like this house. We need a house we can live in and open up the windows and keeps the cold out and the heat in. And these windows just don't do it. And I think the Anderson product will do that for us and maintain the integrity and the look of the house. And go forward for another 100 years. And although wood is, you're right, the reason they sided this house was because wood, as you know, there's no wooded surface that you don't repaint every 3 or 4 years. The windows that we're looking for, again, won't need that kind of upkeep that most people are not going to do, and these will last for the next 50 or 60 years in Huntington Woods, certainly when we're long gone, and not end up with the same situation that exists now, where you can see through some of the door frames, or window frames, rather.
And while these are replacement windows, they are replacement because the windows that exist are no longer functional. And that's the only reason they're being replaced. Now, whether or not we could get another company who could give a little more exacting light, we have looked into that with Pella. The quality wasn't the same, and that was ultimately our decision not to go with that. We chose something that we thought matched the integrity of the house. Something that would look and do justice to the house. And believe me, we bought this house because of what it is. We don't want to change that. And as to the idea of restoring, I respect that immensely. On the other hand, that's also to suggest that, some improvements that we have in the present aren't necessarily advantageous. I mean, they certainly are more efficient and easy to use. and easier, as my husband said, to maintain, which most people are not willing to do. So, that's really all I have to say about that. And in terms of the integrity of the house, the way it looks, we don't want to change that. And our plans at this moment show that. I mean, we've got a door that looks exactly the same, and we're maintaining the exterior, the window, which is a feature of that house. So I honestly, I think that that's really what your purpose is, to make sure that the house maintains its visual integrity. And we haven't, and certainly there's been changes already to the house. There's the aggregate front step that certainly is not original. So there have been changes. The aluminum that they put on that house is just not original. So in a way, we're restoring it back to what it was.
I'm hearing that there might be a few more questions that people would like to ask up here. Is that, you're good, but I think you two both have questions?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
Go right ahead, and then we'll ask a few more questions, so thank you, because that's good if there's questions.
So one question is, some of the photographs show a detailing around the outside of the exterior of the windows. In one of them, so for example, this one where the aluminum is pulled back, and it shows this pretty, this kind of stepped profile. I gather that you're not going to do that when you install the new windows, you won't be putting in that kind of profile or something resembling that.
No, all the aluminum was flat on the outside.
Well, right, yeah.
The wood wrought behind it was brick, probably some kind of brick mold or something, I'm guessing, which would have had a profile.
OG profile.
Yeah. And so, but in your proposal, you're not going to replicate that.
No, we were just gonna go with the aluminum trim on the outside, the sand tone.
So basically, you'd be redoing what was done before.
Yes.
Okay. Are you certain that the front door is the original front door design?
I have a feeling it is not the original front door.
Me too.
It doesn't seem thick enough to be the original 1920 plank, those heavy plank doors that they made. This seems thinner and cheaper.
Right. It doesn't look like a Craftsman-style door either.
It doesn't,
It does not.
Yeah, and you probably could replace it with something that would be just as good that is.
Again, we tried to replace it with what was there.
Yeah, well, this is a digression. But, when, like, for example, when you're talking about finding the sandstone color underneath, that may have been the color that was on the house in the 1970s, which makes perfect sense to me. It would be some kind of a putty kind of like color, which is in fashion then. But that probably wasn't the original color on the house. Now, this is not our beeswax, I understand that,
Well,
but,
but actually it might well have been, because when you look at it and you scrape it, there's nothing underneath it except the original wood. So unless they went in and stripped all the wood around the edges, I think it was.
yeah, it might be worthwhile in your garage, a little check in there.
But even when we took the siding off the front door, and we saw the wood, it was that beige color, and you could see, because it was flaking, the original, there wasn't layers of other color or a layer of other color underneath.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. On the lintels, I noticed all the way around the house, so the lintels, if we were judging the photographs correctly, the lintels are covered with aluminum also.
Not exactly. Some of them are broke, and like I said, he has a mason that's gonna fix.
No, I'm talking about the lintels over the windows.
Oh, yes, yeah.
To my chagrin, you're absolutely right. I would love to see those wood again. I assume they were at one point.
No, they may have been metal.
Probably, yeah, probably steel, yeah.
They might be
No
metal.
idea what.
We
Pardon?
just wrap them aluminum for the flashing, so for water, I'm guessing.
And you would do the same thing then when you put in the windows, you just replace it with aluminum. Okay, all right.
We would just cover you were not gonna remove the steel lintel, because it goes into it should go above the brick.
No, I wasn't saying that. I was just wondering, would you just expose it, or would you, I see.
No, we would do a head flashing, so it doesn't leak in from the top.
I thought you were talking about the wooden things that are the roof supports.
No.
Those things that were covered with aluminum as well.
Like, you can see that they project a little bit above the windows, which is an interesting detail, actually. But, okay, that's for me. That's questions for me.
Robert,
Hank, do we have the original drawings for this house?
We may,
Can we check that out?
tonight.
No, we're talking about it.
If, I will tell you that you're gonna need to take about a 15 to 20-minute recess to do that. And if you feel that that's important enough to do that, that would be up to the chair to call a recess, and I'm happy to go take a look for them. But you're gonna need to call a recess for it.
We were told that stuff was destroyed in the flood. I'm not certain this would be included, that stuff.
If it was on the bottom row of the file cabinets down there at the time, it may well have been.
We were told that the blueprints were destroyed. I'm not certain if that's true or not, but that's what we have been led to believe.
There's only one way for me to find out. So,
Yeah, it'd be
So-
interesting to see them. We'd love to see them.
To my point that, Jeff asked all the questions I was going to ask. I have a slightly different perspective, though. The front door you can bet your money on, that is not an original door. And the door that you are proposing to replace it with is not a craftsman door, not in any way, shape, or form. It's a colonial door. And it is the wrong period and style for the house. The reason windows were black or white is black cuts glare. So back in the day, when you just had this beautiful floated glass as windows, frames were always painted black to cut glare. And in more classy houses, for some reason, they became white. So that's a little historic side note there. And to obtain an original arts and crafts entry door, and I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but the mass destruction of houses in Detroit has provided a motherlode of architectural material for new projects. And Architectural Warehouse in Detroit on Warren is jammed full of doors and windows. And you could easily, well, maybe not easily, but you could most likely find an appropriately sized original arts and crafts door to go into your house.
I know that, I'm familiar with that place.
It's a great place.
It is.
It's a terrific resource. And I think it's like, if it was a project I was working on, it's the first stop I would make.
We also were too, but my wife, her project is a speech pathologist. I'm an attorney, and quite frankly, to be honest with you, it's not our careers. We don't have.
Right, that's
I
why you,
mean, it's not what we do for a living.
right, that's why you hire people who do that, to do that for you.
Finding people to do that.
Right, that's what
It's
it's about.
difficult, quite frankly.
That's what it is. Can we see if there are drawings available, Chris? That will answer questions.
I'm fine with that if everyone, would other people like to see the drawings?
Recess for the plans?
Correct.
Why not?
okay, so then, Mr. Chair, so you're calling for like a 15-minute recess. I would caution both the commission and the applicants that discussion should not take place during those period. It's not a communication time because it won't be on the record. And you can't have any ex parte communications, and I'll go take a look for those.
Do you want help, Hank?
No, it's gonna be down, I just have to go through the file.
Okay. Just offering if it helped you.
We want to say.
Okay.
Now be careful, remember, it was rained a little today.
Yeah.
I
our friends, their in-law got stuck with the car in the puddle.
Mr. Chairman, we are back live. I would ask you to call the meeting back to order.
All right, I will call the meeting back to order. It's 8:43 according to my timing device here. So I think we are right at the time of the meeting where we've already had the applicant respond to some of the input, and at this point in time, I'd like to close discussion with the public and the applicant, and we have an opportunity as a commission to talk about it and possibly throw some motions on the table. So,
Mr. Chair, just for the record, the plans, the whole file, it was a bottom file. And yes, the basement is flooded now, but it's not that bad. But, yeah, there is no plans for this house.
thank you for the record. Okay. So we have some opportunities to either throw some motions out here or talk about this application as a commission. So does anybody have any motions to entertain or need to have some more discussion about the application? I heard a noise down there, so I'm
I'll
looking
make
at
a
you.
motion. I'll make a motion if the application be denied on the basis that we do not have sufficient information to make an appropriate decision. We should be seeing a sample of the window and the materials and more information on the direct installation and what that final appearance is going to be like. And also that the door is not appropriate for the house. It is a colonial style door, not a craftsman style door.
Mr. Chair, could I ask what, did we incorporate into the motion, what standards?
Can I see your sheet?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Or you can look at the worksheet.
Number 2, removal of distinctive materials, which would be the window framing. Number 5, distinctive materials, features, finishes, and construction techniques. Number 6, deteriorated historic features will be repaired rather than replaced. I think that's it.
Is there anybody else who will support that motion?
I'd like to, we're still in the,
We're still in the discussion.
we're still in the
If you'd
discussion
like
stage.
to talk about it, feel free.
We talked about,
Well, it could be seconded for points of discussion, so if it doesn't have a
That's-
second, the motion would fail.
Is there a second to that motion? So it looks at this point in time that that motion fails.
we've discussed in the past the process for tabling proposals, to kind of keep them in suspension, and you had one observation about the commission, that if Robert's Rules of Order took precedence, I could move that the proposal be tabled, so that we have time to collect information, you have time to think about your alternatives, we could, have another meeting to discuss it. And that would be, according to Robert's Rules of Order, that would be a non-debatable, it would be a non-debatable motion. In other words, it'd be a motion, you'd either vote it up or vote it down. But, and so this is a question of process here, I guess, in part. Just for your information, meaning the Schmear's information, because I know this is being recorded, that we had another proposal come up where it was advantageous to kind of suspend the conversation for a while and collect more information. And in that case, the idea was that the applicant requested it be tabled. So, do you have something to add, Hank?
Yeah, I know exactly where you're going with it, but I just wanted the process, because there's more to it than just Robert's Rules of Order. According to Public Act 169, the applicant has to ask for the table, and they also also have to agree to waive their 60-day time frame in order for it to be heard. If they don't do that, then you should vote it up or down. If they're not, and there's also a form for them to sign saying that they voluntarily waive their time frame in order to get this tabled to the next meeting. If that works for them, then that's fine. If it doesn't, then you should vote it up or down. The other option that they have too is they could withdraw their application and bring it back, and that way that also would not require a vote.
If they bring back the application, Hank, does it have to, can it be the same, or does it have to be materially different?
If they withdraw the application, they've withdrawn the application. So there's nothing more for you to consider at this point. If they're tabling it, and they're tabling for the purpose of making changes, which is actually a postponement, if they're doing that, and then there should be some form of material change to that in order for it to come back. In other words, to come back and have the same discussion is not going to be prudent for either the board or the Schmears. So that's kind of where they're at. Now, at that point in time, too, I believe that Mr. Mahaffey could bring in samples and other things that may or may not sway some of the commission's opinions, one way or another, but it would give him an opportunity to do so. And with the visual aid, it may help some of the board members understand exactly how the installation process works. So those are some options to consider when you're dealing with this. But the application or the request to table and to voluntarily waive their 60-day right to be heard on this and voted on would have to come from the applicants.
So I hope that, I know there's some legal terms here, but I'll kind of dumb it down because I'm not so smart, but we're just trying to find some ways so that you don't have to pay another application fee, and we can fill in some of the details that we feel would be necessary. So I guess it is kind of up to you if you are amenable to some of those choices, and if so, we'd like to hear from you now.
Sure. It seems like there's also a lot of talk about the door, the entry door being fiberglass, and like I said, I don't have a sample of that and that kind of thing. The windows, obviously, we're renewal by Anderson windows. We carry one line. That's all it is. They're all the Fibrex composite material. The colors have been picked out. Would it be willing to table a motion to approve the windows and then, or make a motion to approve the windows but table the entry door? Would that be something willing?
They could split it up, but again, here's the thing. If they split it up, and pardon me, Mr. Chair, but I just want to make sure that we're clear on this. If you split it up and you table the entry door, that means you're going to take that, which is fine, and then you're going to ask them to approve the windows, which has been fairly well discussed with not enough information. So tabling the door, I'm not sure how that helps you. You're certainly welcome to ask for that, because
I just heard more people ask more about the door and comment more about the door than anything.
And just speaking about the door, the reason we selected that door was because it looked like the door that was there. I mean, we weren't trying to find new ground. We saw the door that was there. It was not particularly good, and we replaced it with something that matched exactly, which seemed pretty logical at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of the door, would be willing to look at a more authentic. In terms of the windows, I'm not quite clear what information you want. Is it that you need to see the window? Is that the main issue here? Or what is it exactly that you still need to know about the windows we're proposing?
It would be helpful. It would be helpful to see an example of what the actual window looked like, both the profile and the grill, because the grill on these Craftsman houses was really very distinctive, very deep actually, and very distinctive. So it would be helpful to actually see the grill. It's a little hard to tell from the drawing. I suspect the drawing doesn't represent it very well. So yeah, it would be helpful.
Many of the buttons on our particular windows have rotted out, or they're not as deep as one might hope they would have been at some point, because they've rotten, I mean, on the upper windows, they've rotted out considerably.
Well, but you can see in the photographs that in many instances where the grills are still there, they're actually quite deep and still very much intact.
I'm just curious, you don't have an image of your window?
So I'm just gonna interject here, because we've discussed a lot of information here. So the question was asked, what would help us make our decision? So I'm gonna focus on that.
Thank you.
So what I've heard is sample is important, because, and I'm gonna go back to just my comments, because I can probably summarize my own comments the best. But, I mentioned that the Department of Interior, U.S. Department of Interior standards are very particular about sight lines, which is about area of glass, dimensions within the rough opening, profiles, planes of glass. So I would also add that I think some site-specific details, better detail on how the existing window is set within that rough opening, as well as what's proposed, would help me. And I would imagine it might help some others. That, coupled with the sample, I think would provide us an opportunity to make a judgment. Otherwise, that's all I'm gonna say. That's all we probably need to say.
I can add one other thing. It would be good to know if there's an alternative when installing the windows to just covering over the edge of the windows with aluminum, because you're in a sense replicating what was done that's a historical deviation from the original look of the house. So it would be good to know if there's an alternative, and I'll bet there is.
They do make a tool, I forgot what it's called, when they've been coiled, they can put a detail, like
A panning.
a step trim or whatever.
They can do panning, they can
Coil.
do, you
Is
could
that
also,
something you're interested in seeing?
well, that's why if I knew what the existing condition was and what the new was, maybe I could make some different judgments. So I'm not gonna tell you what you need to do, but
Sure.
I'm just gonna say that that would help me feel better or worse about what you're doing. I guess it depends, but it gives me the information to be able to make it.
Yeah, if I can just add one more thing. I mean, I think that if you go back and look at the windows really closely, and then think about what are the ways that you can, as closely as possible, replicate the way the windows not only look, but the way they're installed, without the use of a lot of covering aluminum, actually. You'll be kind of moving the look of the windows, closer to the way they were originally, so.
You're wanting to see more of a brick mold.
Attention to detail is nice.
It's attention to detail is important, yeah, it really is.
Well, and with the mutton patterns, actually, your windows do have the different ones, the thickness, so you do get shadows, and it would be helpful like on a three-dimensional. In fact, one of the things that's recommended is a three-dimensional sample or mock-up provides the most definitive test of an effective visual match. That's actually in the guidelines. Not ours, but in the actual national ones.
One other thing that might be helpful, Mr. Chair, is even if you have a piece of 1x9 lumber that you can hold on edge and see what 3/4 takes off, see what, so you can get an idea of the reveal. So,
That's where I'm sorry, I like plans, so that's where the details were for me, but yes,
as a
others who
visual-
don't
as a
read.
visual aid.
Absolutely, so.
I have a couple, I mean, the requirements on the historic, are they recommendations, or are they by law requirements?
They're guidelines,
So they're not, they're recommendations and guidelines, yes.
but, again, it is our duty to do our best to interpret those guidelines and uphold those
No, I
guidelines.
understand.
So,
The standards.
standards, excuse me, the U.S. Department of Interior standards,
And I
guidelines,
talked to,
standards.
I did at one point talk to Bolliard, because they do carry a brand of windows. And speaking with them, again, they were talking, it was more expensive to use them than the Anderson product. Is there, if we follow these recommendations, is there financial help that we get to?
So
Because
that's,
these are more expensive, Bolliard was more expensive. Is there financial incentives?
You can get historic tax credits, which are just recently been reinstated. So if you spend over 10% of the SEV of your home on your project, then you can recoup up to 25% of your of your expenditure in state income tax credits. So as a result, we've had people in the historic district before it was taken away and then put back. It would, where they've had $67,000 that they obtained in credits for their house. So yes, the answer is there is help. So a lot of what it is. Now, since it's just through and we haven't administered any since they came back, because it is very recent, you would be the first going back through, but we were very successful in the past at getting historic tax credits for our residents in the historic district.
So they do, so if we spend more money, we would get that money back, you're saying?
I can't tell you that you'll get that money back because I'm not the body that approves it, but doing it that way and submitting it to the state would have a high likelihood of success.
It's not a matter of spending more money. It's an issue of following the standards, working to the governance standards.
Well, these are recommendations or suggestions.
Well, they're called
standards.
standards. They're issued by the government, and that's what we are supposed to be following.
And depending on how much you spend, you may be able to, with no changes, still get some money back. But if you spend additional, you would, as long as you met the standards Hank just mentioned, you would get money back against your taxes.
It's a good opportunity. Basically what it does, we've had people get them in the historic district where before they were gonna use ephes instead of true stucco, they changed to true stucco and they got, I believe it was close to $20,000 back on their house for reworking it. We have one person do a complete renovation on the inside and a small addition. And while they didn't get the addition, they did get the systems that were replaced.
We have to do I mean, we're on a fixed income now, obviously, we're getting retired.
No.
Do we have to do the work first before we get the money? I mean, is
Yeah,
there
you don't get it until you do it. You have to show that you've done it and that it meets the standards. So that's documented through photographs and evidence like that, and there's forms that we fill out.
So
I
we might
do
invest in may or may not. I'm just.
It's a little better than may or may not.
Okay, I understand.
So it's just, and again, to give you a definitive answer, I can't say that until I see the end product.
And the standards are the same.
Yeah.
The standards the state's using to judge that money are the same standards that we use. So I guess we're back to, I think, clarify what would help us, and so we're back to the issue about if whether or not you're gonna make a request.
My question is, do you feel, so you're basically saying you don't have enough information to make a decision, correct? So what would you do, just not make a decision?
And winter's
They
coming.
they would vote it down
They
at
would- we
this
would
point.
probably-
They won't not make a decision.
We'll
They'll
make a
vote up or
decision.
down. They will make a decision.
So you'll make a decision, you'll vote it down, and then we'd meet again in a month?
No. We're saying if we don't table it, they will make a decision, vote yea or nay. If they vote nay, they vote nay. We walk out of here and we have to do alternative. We have to figure out how we're gonna proceed. Or we can say we'll table it and we'll come back in a month or 2 months, winter time, and not have windows during the winter. And this is what we're being asked,
Oh.
essentially. Am I correct in my-
Yeah, but in the back of our mind, just so you know, we're trying to save you also the application.
No, I am.
So that's why we're having this discussion.
Yeah.
So
It's August, we're looking for a decision, obviously.
we understand.
Well, and it does take a few months to get the windows. So, all right, so then if we decide to table it, then that means that we would come back in a month? Is that correct?
Hank, can,
If you have the presentation in order, then you would come back.
And the
next month.
presentation would involve seeing the window?
He
Yeah?
would be involved,
terrific.
Mr. Mahaffey would bring in, if you stay with his window, he would bring in the window, perhaps a piece of trim, dimensional,
Okay.
non-dimensional, to, so hold up so you can see what it is and you can see what the reveal is in real life rather than
Right,
a piece of paper.
That I
And
totally
then
understand.
that's what would happen. Now, if that's the case and you get the information in, there's no reason that you couldn't be heard on the first Wednesday of September.
I mean, there's part of me that says we've done past couple of months, we bought this house, we knew we were gonna be coming in front of you guys. We researched this, we think this house is special, we don't wanna change this house. We are not looking to make it any different than really it is now. Yes, there are going to be some minor changes, obviously, because we're using a different product. I know you would like to go back to wood, I would like to go back to steam heat, it was much more comfortable for my skin. But guess what, it's not practical. There are certain things that are practical, and we wanna put in windows that are $55,000, that are top of the line, that will essentially, unless you actually walk up to that window and touch it, which you're not allowed to do to begin with, you're not gonna see any change, it's not gonna look any different. And the side windows, quite frankly, that are seen by my neighbor, generally not seen by the road because there's bushes back there, so they're not really visible. And the windows that will be seen, the two on the top, were pretty much 70% of them are obscured by the roof line. And the one window we're not changing at all because it is beautiful. And as I say, although our application included the door, I sort of suspected we had to replace the door with what was there, and we wanted a more efficient door. We weren't looking to make a change to make it any less craftsman-y than we thought it was, quite frankly. I mean, I'm an architectural expert, but the door, it's obviously been there for many years, I suspect. And we were just replacing it. So, as I say, my instincts say, you know what these windows look like. They're gonna be beautiful. I've seen them on my daughter's house in Pleasant Ridge. They look spectacular. They certainly will look a whole lot better than what we have now. And for the future, I think they will increase the value of our home. I think it will increase the value actually of the historic district. And it's precisely what the recommendations are, that we are going to maintain what this house represents. And that's what we will do, and we will give it a future going forward that can be maintained much more than it has been maintained now. Because the wood, as we have seen, has not been maintained. And these are, as I say, although we can talk about restoring 100-year-old windows, these are indeed 100-year-old windows. And one might say, oh, life was good back then, but no, there are certain things that are better now. And we can incorporate those better things now into windows that will do exactly what we want them to do, and I think will do exactly what me as a member of this community and a long-term member of this community would want to see going into the future.
So I take it we're
I
just,
want to vote.
okay, thank you. That's what I want, I just want to know where we're going. So,
As I
based
said,
on this,
I will, just before we finish, we will look into, we will not put a crappy door back on. We will look forward to getting a nicer door. But yeah, the windows are beautiful windows. We've done the research, and they will add value to the home and not detract at all.
Can I speak for 1 second? Or not? Are we done
why
with
don't we
this
just, we know what we have to do, so why don't we, the homeowners have
Can we leave when you vote?
indicated where they want to go, so
Okay.
why don't we just, I mean, I feel like we've
Okay.
given the option, I think we beat it to death, and let's as a commission, we'll have our discussion and hopefully entertain a motion here, if that's okay, Steve? So
Okay.
we have obviously we have the proposal as it is. So I'm looking for a motion or more discussion. And we can't just sit here all night.
I'm gonna, just reiterate my point that, the homeowner thinks they're beautiful windows. Unfortunately, we have not had the option to examine them and look at them in the same detail, and, I'm still, uncomfortable without having a product here
Yeah, I
to
agree.
look at, and I can understand some of your concerns. You're voicing some of the same concerns.
I would agree.
I would hate to vote down a project only because there wasn't an opportunity to look at something in person.
Well, and one of the things that Hank said is right now you may not meet the threshold to get a tax deduction. You might make some modifications, which actually end up costing you less because of the tax advantage. I'm not a tax attorney, but if you're below the threshold to even start, then you can't get 25% back. If you get above that threshold, you may. You may want to consider wood instead of a composite.
We have.
Huh?
We have.
Okay. But you may want to look and see what that price differential is, and then see if that qualifies you to get into the tax advantage, where you might actually be eligible for 25% of your expense to be covered. You may be below that threshold at this point in time. All I would do is sit down with Hank. He knows what your taxable value or whatever the lines are.
I can find that out.
Yeah. It may actually be to a double advantage. If you do have wooden windows, I don't think there would be anyone at the table that would disagree. Seems like the question was color, but I don't think that would be a dramatic thing. And on the door, I'm not positive that everyone at this table would say you have to go back to something that you've never seen, and that this city can't tell you what it looked like. That's my point of view.
So is any more discussion, or I'm still looking for a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'm gonna suggest that you either have to have a motion up or down on this, and the applicant has asked for a decision. So somebody's gonna have to make a motion one way or another.
Can I make a motion?
Either that, or if you fail to take an action and 60 days elapse, the application will be automatically approved.
And you don't wanna see pictures, correct? You wanna see actual sample, actual grill?
I think we've been clear about what would help us. How's that? Just feel like we've talked about it a bit, so I think we're still back to the entertaining a motion.
Hank, can I ask a procedural question? If there's a motion to approve and it's denied, and the applicants want to come back another time, there has to be a significant change to the plans, does there not?
There has to be something different. They can't keep coming back with the same.
Okay. If there's a motion to deny and it's approved, does that change?
If there's a motion to deny and it's approved, they're done. And have
Well,
to
they can
resubmit.
come back again.
That is
correct?
correct.
But
Is
they
it the
have to
same?
reapply.
They have to resubmit.
Right.
No,
You sure?
I don't know if that helped me.
I don't
but
know if they.
Either way, I would anticipate that there would be some additional information or changes. Is that correct, Hank?
There's gonna be changes.
No
either
matter
way.
what, either whether I sit,
Yeah, if
whatever
you-
the
if
motion
you-
is, if we,
If you approve it as is, this is what you're getting. If you deny it and you go with different standards or whatever, you might consider some of the ones that Robert has mentioned before, and then it's done.
Okay.
So they would have to resubmit with new information, new details.
You know, we could bring the window sample by tomorrow. I mean, if you want to, I don't know, you meet once a month, but if you can extend, you can see the sample soon enough.
the table would push us to the next meeting, correct, Hank?
That is
So
correct.
Unless
you wanted to hold a
special meeting.
I mean, if you want to, if that is the most important detail that you're missing, that you can have by tomorrow.
Yeah, but they can't meet tomorrow, because
Well-
there's public notice and there's requirements that I have to put
Okay.
out.
Yeah, that's the issue. We have some other things we have to do to behave.
You could meet there towards the end of the month, but once you get towards the end of the month, you're 10 days away from
Correct.
the September meeting anyway.
Am I allowed to make a motion? I don't think that's right protocol. So I'm going to ask
Yeah.
again, can somebody please make a motion so that we can figure out what to do with this application?
I'll resubmit my original motion.
Could you just, because I'm forgetful, tell me what it was in your standards, please, so that we can all talk about it?
A motion to deny based upon failure to meet standard 2,
No, did you write it down?
standard 5, standard 6.
Thank you. Is there anyone who will second that motion? Seeing that we don't have a second, that fails. We're still looking for a motion that somebody can put forth for this proposal, please.
Mr. Chair, maybe somebody would try an inverse motion. If there's nobody that wants to deny it, then perhaps somebody would put a positive motion through.
I would encourage us to have some action on this.
If not, then you're gonna end up moving to adjourn and the time
I've
will
got a
expire
copy.
and their windows they'll get their windows. And the door.
We don't want the door now. You've convinced me, Jeffrey.
I think that there was no second hopes that the applicants would ask for a table. I know as much as the applicants have indicated they don't want a table and they want a motion one way or another, I think that they're, I just want to make sure that that is still the position of the applicant.
A table means that we'll come back next month with the sample.
That's correct.
Yes.
All right, I think that's agreeable.
Okay, so just to be clear, if they want to.
I'm afraid we have a schism in this family.
If you vote against us, do we have relief?
Yes, you can go to the State Historic Preservation
Can
Board.
we go to the circuit court?
No, you go to the State Historic Preservation Board. The Circuit Court does not apply in this particular case. You have to go to the State Historic Preservation Board
First.
and then you will end up at the Circuit Court.
Okay, thank you.
Or we could wait a few more weeks.
It's gonna be waited.
I know.
I will tell you, if time's a concern, the State Historic Preservation Board, you won't
I know,
get till
it's-
winter.
Around 6 months.
Yeah, no, I understand that. It's frustrating because I really wanted to bring a sample, and I think that would have made a difference. But as it is, we're gonna have to wait another month. But I guess I'm willing to do that, because at this point, I don't know that you're able to vote.
Mr. Chair, can I make a suggestion?
I would love that.
Okay. Perhaps if the Schmears would be interested in withdrawing their application, and then I could poll the commission at a later time and see if there's a possibility of getting a special meeting for them that would meet with our Open Meetings Act. And then they could come back, bring the sample back at that. They might be able to beat the next meeting by a couple weeks.
Sounds good.
But they would do that. So they would withdraw from this application. They've heard what you have to say. They get a feeling of what they want to do. It would take the vote off the table because they're withdrawing the application. And it would be on the record. So that's one thought that may perhaps help the Schmears with their situation and also placate the board.
Thank you for the options, Hank. I appreciate the help. So the other option is tabling pushes you. We know it'll be next month's meeting. The idea of withdrawing the application and then resubmitting, we would try to have a special meeting to get things, maybe shave a couple weeks off that time frame to help.
How much was the application? I didn't know we.
See, it was a couple hundred.
$300.
Yeah, I'd be willing to do that, especially if we could meet within a couple of weeks as opposed to waiting another month.
And then I just want to be clear, right now you have 6 people. I cannot guarantee you how many people you have at any given meeting. And you still need 4 votes. So that's, I just want to be upfront with everything. So if that's the case.
You guys are gonna be here.
We don't have a date. So that's what I'd
Has
have.
any vacations planned? Yeah, we did, but how about you guys?
When is Labor Day?
First
Yeah, but
week
the
is-
meeting's right after that.
Yeah, with the meetings right
Yeah.
after that, so it'd be pre-Labor Day.
It would be pre-Labor Day, so you're good.
Correct. And my guess is it's gonna be 2 to, I mean, it's already
It's
the 3rd, so it's gonna be 2 weeks out at the earliest,
It'll
right?
be every bit of 2 weeks out. If I poll you tomorrow with a date that I can book the room, that I can get everything together, and we do that, and we go forward with it, then, I send out my notices, we have the date. I'll try to keep it to a Wednesday like we normally do.
So you'd be targeting the 17th, and the worst case would be the 24th, right?
Pretty much.
Okay, so that's about the best we can do for looking into our crystal ball.
Hank, is it possible to have the request to table, but that we hold a special meeting, so there's no additional charge?
You can, but I don't have a date for a special meeting, so I can't table to a date certain. That's the only problem with
Or
that.
can we table to a date
What
uncertain?
we can do is, I can talk to our city manager about possibly, and again, no guarantees, about possibly waiving the pre-application fee
I would
for the
appreciate
second time.
That would be appreciated, Hank. So I'm a little slow, as everybody knows, so I'm confused as to where we're even at with our decision. So are we withdrawing the application, or are we tabling? I mean, Hank, based on all that stuff you just talked about,
Yeah.
it's better to withdraw, and we're gonna try to get the application fee waived, is that what I heard
Well, I
from you?
can't table it because the only thing I could table it to is to the September meeting.
So we're
if they
withdrawing
want
the
something
application.
sooner than that, they have to
Okay.
withdraw the application.
So,
And that'll be up to them, they'll have to articulate.
What, I'm willing to articulate, I'm not quite sure what though. I would like to have you call a special meeting if possible.
So you have to withdraw.
You would have to withdraw the application
Okay,
for
fine, and then
tonight.
we'll come together hopefully in the next couple of weeks.
yes,
All right.
okay. Thank you very much.
I need to hear somebody say I withdraw the application.
I withdraw the application temporarily. Is that
You're
good
gonna
enough?
have to withdraw the application, and then we're going to have to do that. I'm gonna give
You
you,
have to resubmit the application.
you're gonna have to resubmit it.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you a form that you're gonna fill out right aside after we're
So
done.
I withdraw the application.
Yes.
I withdraw the application.
Thank you very much. Okay, so,
Can I ask on the details, is there a way to get addresses for what doors you do like, styles, that match the style house by then?
I think we could probably send you some photos of craftsman doors, which you might discuss
I
with
just
your
wanna be on the
clients.
same page as you guys when we.
I think Hank will probably,
Does anybody make those doors?
Oh, yes,
Tons of
oh,
companies.
yes,
very, very
There are many
easy.
companies.
Tons
oh,
of-
yes.
Better off buying an old one.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely make a trip down to, the
Architectural warehouse.
Hank, I trust that you can help with some of those discussions.
Yes.
And can you help with some of the discussions on details?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, sir. You know what I'm looking for, and if we need to call, if
Yes.
you need to call me, we can talk.
Yep.
Thank you.
Absolutely. What I would suggest, in order to take care of them before they leave, and in light of the time that it is now, I would suggest that we postpone the administrative approvals until the next regular meeting,
It's,
if that's something that the board would be interested in.
I don't know, would
This
people
way
like to
allow me to-
postpone the last agenda item, or do you have time this evening? I am easily swayed, I can stay if we want, or I can be swayed, so.
If, Hank, if you're okay with letting it go for another month, it's fine
Thank you,
by me.
gentlemen.
I'm fine.
Aunt Lady.
And lady,
Don't leave yet, because I gotta give you an application. Okay. That's the,
I'm sorry, I missed that just because I was talking. What do we want to do? Do we want to address this last piece on our agenda, or do we want to table it to next meeting?
Well, I just asked Hank if he was okay with letting it go for another month, and he said he's fine with that.
And if you,
I can stay.
Do we have a do I have to make a mo?
Yeah, need to have signed, it's an agenda item, I need to.
Okay, so make a motion to table it.
I move that we delay the discussion of administrative approvals until the next meeting,
Can someone please second that?
Next regularly scheduled meeting.
next regularly scheduled meeting. Yeah,
Can someone please second that? Someone?
I don't mind
That's
staying, so I can.
Okay, second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, do we have any?
I
opposed?
came late.
I heard no opposition.
Okay.
At this, no public participation, Hank, I just want to go on record with that, so we don't have to worry about that. And then I guess just looking for a motion to close the meeting out officially.
I move that we adjourn.
I have a technical question. Michal came in very late. Could she vote tonight?
Yes.
Would you feel
Voting then.
comfortable voting?
No, I was going to, no.
Recuse yourself? Okay.
Or abstain.
She could abstain.
She could abstain.
Yeah.
I will, well, I'll save my commentary. She's a skilled architect. She could have voted, in my opinion, and it wouldn't have been a conflict because she is an architect and can read plans and has an opinion, but that's me. I think we're adjourned, Hank.
We have a motion was made by.
I move
Oh, I
that,
second.
I
Okay,
move that
so
we
first,
adjourn.
second, and
All in
then
favor?
Mr. Gammon.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hank, should we hold on to